I'm Jake, a long-haul trucker who's been hauling refrigerated trailers for 12 years. You get used to the quirks of the job, the hum of the reefer unit kicking on at 2 a.m., the creak of metal as the cold shifts the trailer's frame, the way snow sticks to the windshield like it's trying to bury you. It's a lonely life, but I've never been scared. Not until last winter, on a frozen stretch of I-94 in North Dakota, when something found me in the dark. Something that wasn't supposed to be there. It was late January, and I was hauling a load of frozen pork from Minneapolis to Bismarck. The snow was coming down hard, a white curtain that swallowed my headlights. I pulled into a rest stop just past Jamestown, a desolate patch of asphalt with no other rigs in sight. The lot was empty, the sodium lights flickering under a blanket of snow. I logged my hours, climbed into the sleeper, and tried to ignore the wind howling like a living thing. That's when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Soft, deliberate, like knuckles rapping on aluminum. It was coming from the back of the trailer where the reefer unit was. I froze, my breath catching. Probably just ice falling, I told myself, or the unit acting up. But the tapping didn't stop. It was rhythmic, patient, like someone, or something, was waiting for me to answer. What was tapping on my trailer in the middle of a blizzard? I grabbed my flashlight and pulled on my coat, the cold biting my fingers as I stepped out. Snow crunched under my boots, already ankle deep, and the wind stung my face like needles. The reefer unit hummed, its low drone cutting through the storm. I rounded the trailer, the tapping louder now, sharp against the aluminum walls. Then it stopped, sudden as a held breath. I stood there, heart pounding, my flashlight beam shaking across the trailer's doors. The temperature gauge on the reefer unit was flashing red. It had jumped from -10 degrees Fahrenheit to 42 degrees Fahrenheit in minutes. That wasn't right. Reefers don't warm up that fast, not in a North Dakota blizzard. I hesitated, my hand on the latch. The air smelled wrong, metallic, like blood, mixed with the sharp bite of frost. I told myself it was a malfunction, maybe a busted seal letting warm air in, but my gut screamed to get back in the cab and drive. I didn't listen. I never should have opened that door. Why was the reefer warming up, and what was that smell? I unlocked the latch and cracked the trailer door just an inch. Mist poured out, thick and cold, swirling in the flashlight's beam like it was alive. The air inside was heavy, damp, not the dry chill of a working reefer. I swung the door wider, and my breath caught. There, on the inner wall, was a handprint. A human handprint smeared in something dark and wet. Blood, it had to be, pressed against the aluminum. It wasn't just a mark. It was fresh, the edges still glistening, like it had been made seconds ago. I stumbled back, my boots slipping in the snow. The flashlight beam darted across the trailer's interior, catching glints of frost and something else, streaks of red trailing across the floor, like something had been dragged through it. Then I heard it, a wet scraping sound, slow and deliberate, like meat sliding over ice. It was coming from deeper inside, where the darkness swallowed my light. What could leave a bloody handprint inside a locked trailer? I slammed the door shut, the clang echoing in the empty lot. My hand shook as I fumbled with the lock, the cold metal burning my skin. I ran back to the cab, snow stinging my eyes, and floored it out of the rest stop. The trailer rattled behind me. The reefer unit's hum louder now, like it was mocking me. I drove 5 miles, maybe 6, to a way station I knew was open 24/7. The whole way, that scraping sound echoed in my head, and I kept glancing in the side mirrors, half expecting to see something crawling out of the trailer. The way station's lights were a beacon through the blizzard. I pulled in, my heart still hammering, and flagged down a state trooper named Carl, a big guy with a no-nonsense stare. I told him about the tapping, the handprint, the blood. He didn't laugh, just grabbed a flashlight and followed me to the trailer. "Probably kids messing around," he said, but his voice was tight, like he didn't believe it himself. Why was the trooper so nervous if it was just kids? We opened the trailer together, the mist spilling out again, thicker this time, curling around our boots like fingers. Carl's flashlight swept the interior, and his face went pale. The handprint was still there, but now there were more, smears and streaks of blood crisscrossing the walls, like something had been clawing at them. The floor was worse. Chunks of meat, not on the manifest, were scattered across the frozen pallets, torn and ragged, like they'd been ripped apart. Claw marks gouged the aluminum, deep and jagged, too wide for any animal I'd ever seen. "What the hell is this?" Carl muttered, his voice barely a whisper. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The air was heavy with that metallic smell, and the reefer gauge was still flashing 42 degrees Fahrenheit, even though the unit was running full blast. Then we heard it, a low, wet gurgle, like something breathing through a throat full of blood. It came from the back of the trailer, where the shadows were thickest. Carl swung his flashlight, but the beam didn't reach. What was hiding in the dark, and why did it feel like it was watching us? "Close it," Carl said, his voice sharp. We slammed the doors, the sound swallowed by the storm. He radioed for backup, but the signal was spotty, cutting in and out with static. "Get inside," he told me, pointing to the way station. I didn't argue. Inside, we sat under harsh fluorescent lights, sipping burnt coffee while the storm raged outside. Carl didn't say much, just kept glancing at the trailer through the window. I tried to tell myself it was vandalism, maybe a stowaway, but deep down, I knew better. That handprint wasn't human, not really. And that gurgling sound, it wasn't right. The backup never came. The storm had closed the roads, and we were stuck. I kept hearing the tapping in my head, over and over, like it was trying to get in. Carl finally spoke, his voice low. "You ever hear about the disappearances out here? Drivers, gone without a trace, always in winter, always with reefers." What did Carl know about those disappearances, and why hadn't he told me sooner? Morning came, gray and heavy, the snow slowing to a drizzle. Carl and I went back to the trailer, armed with a crowbar and his service pistol. The reefer unit was silent now, the gauge stuck at 42 degrees Fahrenheit. We opened the doors, bracing for the worst. The mist was gone, but the blood was still there, dried now, flaking off the walls. The claw marks were deeper than I remembered, and the chunks of meat were frozen solid, like they'd been there for weeks. But there was something new. A single glove, black leather, lying in the center of the floor. It was crusted with frost, even though the trailer was too warm for ice. Carl bagged the glove, said he'd send it for testing. The load was ruined. Contaminated, they called it. And the company wrote it off. I drove back to Minneapolis with an empty trailer, the reefer unit off, but I could still hear that scraping sound in my mind, feel the weight of those unseen eyes. Where did that glove come from, and why was it frozen in a warm trailer? I hit a trucker bar a few nights later, needing to talk, to make sense of it. An old driver, his hands scarred from years on the road, overheard me. "You heard it, didn't you?" he said, eyes narrowing. "The thing in the reefer." "What do you know about it?" I asked, my throat dry. He leaned in, voice low. "Been stories for years. Reefers picking up passengers, not human. They hide in the cold, in the dark. You hear tapping, you smell blood, you see things that don't add up. They say it's tied to a wreck back in '87, a reefer that went off a 94 in a storm. Driver and cargo gone. But the trailer. They found it weeks later, claw marks inside, blood everywhere." "What's it want?" I asked, my voice shaking. He didn't answer, just slid a napkin across the bar. Scratched on it was a single word: don't. What was the thing in the reefer, and why did it leave that glove behind? I don't haul reefers anymore. Switched to dry vans, safer runs. But the tapping follows me. At night, when I'm parked, I hear it. Faint, rhythmic, coming from nowhere. The smell of blood lingers, faint but unmistakable, in my cab, my clothes, my dreams. Last week I found something under my bunk. A black leather glove, crusted with frost, identical to the one Carl bagged. I burned it in a rest stop fire pit, watched it curl and blacken, but the smell didn't go away. Last night, my CB crackled, though I hadn't touched it in months. A wet, gurgling voice filled the cab. "Jake, 42 degrees, come back." I smashed the radio, but the sound didn't stop. It's in my head now, that scraping, that tapping, that voice. I don't know what's out there on I-94. I don't know if it's a ghost, a demon, or something older, something colder. But I know it's waiting, and I know I'll never park alone with a reefer trailer again. Not after midnight. Will I ever escape the thing that found me in that trailer? If this story gave you chills, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You never know what's coming next. I'm Eddie, a long-haul trucker with 20 years on the road, hauling everything from furniture to frozen fish across the lower 48. Most guys my age have switched to smartphones, but I'm old school. I keep a CB radio in my rig, set to channel 19, for emergencies, or just to hear another voice in the dead of night. Nothing ever scared me out here. Not the empty highways, not the flickering truck stoplights, not even the stories drivers swap over burnt coffee. But in the summer of 2017, on a lonely stretch of US 50 in Nevada, the loneliest road in America, something found me. Something that still whispers my name. It was past midnight, and I was hauling a load of auto parts from Reno to Ely. US 50 is a desolate ribbon of asphalt. Nothing but sand and sagebrush for miles. No cell service, no lights. Just you in the dark. The stars were sharp, like they could cut through the sky, and the air was heavy with the heat of a Nevada summer. My CB crackled faintly, the usual chatter long gone at this hour. I was alone, or so I thought. Then it happened. The CB dial spun on its own, clicking from channel 19 to channel 13. No static, no white noise, just a woman's voice, soft and desperate, cutting through the silence like a knife. "Help me. Mile marker 237. My skin prickled. I checked my location. Mile marker 236, 1 mile away. Who was calling for help, and how did they know exactly where I was? I figured it was a prank, some kid messing with a stolen radio. But the signal was too clear, too close, like she was right there in the cab. I turned the dial back to 19, but the voice didn't stop. "Help me. Mile marker 237. It whispered again, now layered, like two voices speaking at once. My hand froze on the knob. CBS don't work like that. They don't hold a signal when you change channels. I shut the radio off, but the whisper lingered, echoing in the cab, faint but undeniable. Curiosity got the better of me. I pulled over at mile marker 237, the gravel crunching under my tires. The highway was empty, the night so still I could hear my own heartbeat. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out, the air thick with the scent of dust and something else, something sharp, like burnt wiring. The beam of my flashlight swept the shoulder, catching nothing but sagebrush and sand. Then, just off the road, I saw it, an abandoned trailer, rusted and faded, no cab in sight. Its back doors were ajar, swaying slightly, though there was no wind. Why was an old trailer sitting here, and what was inside? I called out, "Anyone there?" My voice felt small, swallowed by the desert. No answer, just the faint creak of the trailer doors. I should have gotten back in my rig and driven away, but that voice on the CB, her voice, pulled me forward. The closer I got, the colder the air turned, like stepping into a freezer. The burnt wire smell grew stronger, stinging my nose. I stood at the trailer's doors, my flashlight shaking in my hand. The gap between them was dark, too dark, like the light couldn't touch it. Then I heard it, a soft weeping, low and broken, coming from inside. It wasn't loud, but it hit me like a punch, raw and full of pain. My mouth went dry. I called out again, "Hello?" Nothing, just the weeping, steady and close, like it was right behind the doors. I gripped the handle, my heart pounding, and pulled the doors wide. What was crying in a trailer that shouldn't be here? The trailer was empty. No cargo, no pallets, just bare aluminum walls glinting in my flashlight's beam. But in the center of the floor was a broken CB radio, its wires frayed, its casing cracked. It was powered on, the display glowing faintly, set to channel 13. And from its speaker came the same voice, looping, "Help me, mile marker 237. I stumbled back, my breath fogging in the air, though it was 80 degrees outside. The weeping stopped, but the voice kept going, now inside my head, whispering my name. Eddie. I slammed the doors shut, the clang echoing across the desert. My flashlight beam caught my rig's side mirror as I turned to run, and I froze. There, in the reflection, was a face, pale, hollow-eyed. A woman's face, staring at me from inside the trailer. Her lips moved, mouthing words I couldn't hear, her eyes locked on mine. I spun around, but the trailer was empty, the doors still closed. My mirror showed nothing now, just the dark highway stretching into the night. Whose face was that, and why was she looking at me? I floored it out of there, my rig roaring as I pushed 70, then 80, the trailer rattling behind me. The CB stayed off, but the whisper didn't. It followed me, faint and relentless, like a passenger I couldn't see. "Eddie, help me," it said over and over, until I thought I'd lose my mind. The mile markers ticked by, each one a lifeline pulling me toward Ely. But the air in the cab stayed cold, the burnt wire smell clinging to my clothes, my skin. I didn't stop until dawn, pulling into a truck stop just outside Ely. The lot was buzzing with early morning drivers, the smell of diesel and coffee grounding me. I sat in the diner, nursing a mug, trying to shake the image of that face in the mirror. The waitress, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag reading Lila, noticed my hands shaking. "Rough night?" she asked, her voice soft but knowing. "You ever hear anything weird on US 50? I said, barely looking up. She paused, then leaned in. "You heard her, didn't you?" "On Channel 13. My stomach dropped. She slid a napkin across the counter, a single word scrawled in pen. "Don't." How did Lila know about Channel 13? And what wasn't she telling me? I couldn't let it go. A few weeks later, I was at a truck stop in Salt Lake City, swapping stories with other drivers. I mentioned the trailer, the voice, the face. Most laughed it off, but an old driver, his face creased like leather, went pale. "You answered her," he said, his voice low. "The woman on Channel 13. "What do you know about her?" I asked, my throat tight. He leaned in, eyes darting like he was afraid to be overheard. Back in the 80s, a woman was kidnapped by a rogue trucker out on US 50. They found his rig, but not her. Never found her body either. Drivers say she's still out there, calling for help on Channel 13. If you answer, if you go looking, she finds you. "What does she want?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer, just pointed to a faded photo on the wall. A news clipping from 1984, showing a rusted trailer on US 50, doors ajar, police tape around it. In the corner of the photo, barely visible, was a figure, a woman, pale and hollow-eyed, standing just outside the frame. Was that the woman I saw? And why was she still calling for help? I stopped using my CB after that, took it out of the rig, locked it in a storage unit. I stuck to main highways, avoided US 50 like it was cursed. But the whispers didn't stop. At night when I'm parked, I hear them, faint, desperate, saying my name. The air smells of burnt wiring, sharp and electric, even in my sleeper. Last week I found something under my seat, a piece of a broken CB radio, its display cracked but glowing, set to channel 13. I threw it into a dumpster, but the next day it was back, sitting on my dashboard, whispering, "Eddie, help me." Last night, I woke to the sound of weeping, soft and broken, coming from the back of my trailer. I didn't look. I didn't open the doors. But as I drove, my side mirror flickered, and there she was, pale, hollow-eyed, staring from the reflection, her lips moving. You answered. I don't know what's out there on US 50. I don't know if she's a ghost, a memory, or something worse. But I know she's waiting. And I know, deep down, I shouldn't have answered her call. Will I ever escape the voice on Channel 13? If this story gave you chills, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. You never know what's coming next.